Hello, everyone. If you have a technical question, please make sure to direct that to me in the chat. My name is Moses Montejano, and I'll go ahead and hand it over to Jay.
All right. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and jump right in talking about using playlists and choice boards for distance learning, especially, and beyond, and for student choice. So I am Jay Sorensen. I'm the Ed Tech coordinator in the Oxnard Union High School District. There is the bit.ly for the presentation here, and I'll give you that again. I'll be throwing some links in the chat as we go as well for some items for you to access as we go. So first, what are playlists and choice boards? So both of them are a great way to provide student choice with the activities that they're doing when they're learning a particular topic. That's great for increasing engagement. Just having that ability to choose what you're doing or how you're demonstrating your learning, adds with buy-in for students and I think for us as adults as well. Both allow for the activities to be self-paced and some self-differentiation, which is really helpful in distance learning as well as in the classroom. And they're both great ways to package the assignments. Some districts might be doing like week-long assignments, or you turn in your work on Friday, or however you have it set up. That's how we were doing it back in the spring. So having a way to sort of package those assignments worked out really well. And then it can also work nicely in blended learning when we return back into the classroom. So I'll talk about that a little bit. So first, focusing on choice boards. So typically choice boards are set up with a 3x3 grid where you would come up with 9 different activities for students to choose from. The idea typically is that you would have students make a tic-tac-toe, although that's not necessarily required to be done that way. If you're looking at doing it over maybe like multiple weeks of distance learning, you might have them, make a double tic-tac-toe or something, or just choose any 3 or whatever number it is that you want to do. You can also set it up with point values. So instead of focusing on the tic-tac-toe, you can just have, 1-point assignments, 2-point assignments, 3-point assignments, and they have to earn a certain number of points by choosing the activities in the grid. It does mean on the teacher end that you are, creating more activities than what all of the students are going to be doing. So if you are having them do just a tic-tac-toe, you're coming up with 9 assignments and each student's only doing 3 of those.
Read and then give them a choice board for that chapter,
Yeah.
so that they're still getting the social stuff.
There we go. On the choice board, typically you have a section where you're providing some helpful videos. So those could be videos having to do with the actual content of the activities. But also I strongly recommend, having you yourself recording a screencast, just sort of an overview of the choice board itself and, what the expectations are, the things that are being covered. That was a lot of the feedback that we got from our students in our district when we were reaching out to students during distance learning. Was they really felt when teachers created videos for them, it was so helpful for them to understand what was being asked of them. And I know when I've taken online courses before, that was a struggle for me. It was like really knowing what the teacher was looking for. So anytime you can add, just a little short 1-minute video explaining the assignment, I think that's helpful. And then a place to turn in the work. And I'll talk about different ways that you can do that. Typically it's going to be designed around a particular topic that you're covering. Again, it's a nice way to package those activities together. Students have choice either in how they're completing the tic-tac-toe or where they're earning the points. And then they can be set up in different ways. So one way might be by the depth of knowledge level. talking to a ELD teacher in my district. She loved the idea of setting it by the different domains of language, so that it's being intentional that you're hitting those different ones. In my district, we're using the T3 framework from Sunny Magana, which focuses on how students are using technology in the classroom. So you could be intentional about hitting the different T3 levels. You could mix in different learning modalities. There's a lot of different ways that you could set these up. So kind of think about what might make sense in your context or what you're trying to accomplish. And you can be very intentional in how you set up these choice boards to ensure that they're hitting those different areas. So thinking about distance learning, again, if you're a district where you're having students complete activities like a week at a time, you know, we struggled with in high school, we have students that have jobs and are working all day and they can't do these check-ins during the day and stuff. So we found that, you know, having things done in a week, also that was the feedback from the students. They really liked when they were given the assignments on a Monday, for example, and then had to turn it in Friday or the following Monday. It helped them when they had all 5 or 6 of those classes, they could kind of gauge how much they needed to get done throughout the week. So again, self-paced, which works well in distance learning because we don't know what our students' home lives are like and those schedules. As I mentioned, including those instructional videos, both on the content and on the assignment itself, giving them resources. We're probably all trying to, you know, have weekly check-ins, office hours, or however you're doing that, and probably some with more success than others. So if you are able to provide that instruction, or if you're moving to a hybrid model, you know, maybe when you have that time in person, you're able to provide that direct instruction. If not, those types of things can be provided through the choice board. And then I talked about the check-ins. So the very first time I was exposed to the idea of these choice boards was a Q session given by Steve Morris, who actually presented here yesterday. Some of you might have been in his session. And I actually wasn't even in his session, but I was in a different session, I believe, and someone tweeted out the resources from this, and I really liked the idea and just kind of started clicking through his presentation. And so some of these ideas and some of these actual resources were taken from his session. So I want to give a big shout out to him. His session was specifically on setting up choice boards to address the depth of knowledge levels. So he wanted to be very intentional about hitting the different DOK levels when dealing with any given topic. So the way that he was presenting that he would set them up was the center square was, you know, the highest DOK, level 3 or 4, and students would be required to do that center square, and then they could choose how they made their tic-tac-toe by doing any 2 others. So the center square was required, and then you would sprinkle the, you know, 1s and 2s. You could throw another 3 in there, and again, it sort of leads to that self-differentiation. But this is a way to ensure that he was hitting those higher DOK levels with all students. So just to give a few examples here and to point out some specific things. So it could be done pencil and paper, it doesn't have to be digital. You know, just having a worksheet or whatever, having a piece of paper where it has different choices on there and students are completing those activities, whether they're digital, online, on paper. And then also the idea that it doesn't necessarily have to be the tic-tac-toe structure, but it could be having different point values. And again, the students are having choice in what activities they're completing and where they're earning their points. This actually is very similar to what the playlists are going to be that we're going to cover in a second here. They also don't have to be set up in the 3x3, you know, 9 square grid, the tic-tac-toe style. It could be just where students are going in and choosing what activities that, you know, there might be some required activities in there, and there might be some that are optional, and maybe all students have to complete a couple of the required ones, and then you have choice in the other ones. This one, as the teacher highlighted, has some that are, easy to use, more artistic, people that are into social media, people that maybe struggle with tech. So they can sort of choose by what their interests are, what their areas of strength are, what their abilities are. But again, just giving students lots of choice. And this was one that one of our high school teachers did as their English final. This particular one, as I mentioned, we use Sunny Magana's T3 framework as a model for our EdTech professional development that we do. And if you're not familiar, basically T1 is just those tools that students use that are for like automation and consumption. T2 is for production, where students are creating things and then sharing those with their classmates. And then T3 is more the inquiry design and like real world problems and things. So anyway, we were using this with teachers and talking about T2 and the different digital tools that are available for students to use to produce things, to create things. And so anyway, we were just giving teachers in the session time to explore some of the different tools that are available. So this was something that we're sort of modeling, which would be a great idea for using in a staff meeting or something, just to model these for teachers to get exposed to the idea of using choice boards, which then they could use with their students. And we were giving them, just they could click around and choose any ones that they were interested in. So different ways that you could collect the student work once they've completed theirs. So this could be something that is, you give the choice board in a assignment in Google Classroom, and then they just turn in the 3 different attachments, for example, that they've completed, turn it in through Google Classroom or whatever LMS that you're using. You could also have something like you assign it along with Google Slides and they turn in their different evidence or links to their evidence or screenshots or whatever on Google Slides. You could collect them using a Google form. A lot of the examples here have a link to a Google form where then they would turn in their link or attach their evidence on the form. I like using Padlet in some instances where the students are creating things, because then they're able to see each other's if they're turning it in Google Classroom. They don't necessarily have access to each other's, but on a Padlet, if they're creating an infographic or a Adobe Spark page or something, and you want them to be able to see each other's, that's a nice way to collect them, or some other tool. And then you also could have students give links to their evidence or screenshots or whatever, their actual evidence on the choice board. So within the squares, they could have the actual evidence right there, and then you would have access to those and you would just sort of click through and see those. So I'm going to jump to a sample right here. And I see Steve Morris in a box right here. So I don't know if you were here earlier for the shout out, but just so you're probably checking in to make sure I'm not just stealing your stuff here, but I am, but with credit. So this was one of the ones that were shared there. And so again, the center square was the one that was required, and then students got to choose which of the 2 they were going to make their tic-tac-toe with. And so each of these has a link to another Google Doc, and then that Google Doc has an activity with directions and things that they're going to complete. So they could sort of explore those and see which ones that they were interested in completing. And then again, helpful videos, these videos specifically on the content of the activity, and then turning it in using a Google form. So I am going to give you all a little bit of time to explore some different choice boards that are set up and designed in different ways. So I'm going to go ahead and throw the link in the chat here. So this is a choice board of choice boards, very meta. So you're just going to have some time to click around and see these are set up in different ways with different intentions. The center one there is the template that you could use. So here is the link in the chat. And I'm just going to give you some time to click around. And then I have the assignment here is just to click. The images themselves are links to the actual resources. So you can just click on those and then click on the link below. And then just think about two things. What do you notice? What do you wonder? So we're going to do a notice and wonder here. And then you can just throw those ideas in the chat. So I'll give you a few minutes just to click around and explore and think about what do you notice about these choice boards and what do you wonder about them? And if anybody has specific questions right now, you can go ahead and throw those in the chat as well. The center square that has the template, it'll do a force make a copy. Something else I want to point out on that one, there's actually two templates in there. There's the traditional 3x3 tic-tac-toe, and then there's a larger one if you wanted to add additional assignments in there. Maybe you're doing it over a longer period, or for whatever reason, there's the 5 in a row tic-tac-toe. So there's a few questions in here. A choice board specifically for the beginning of the year. I don't have one specifically for that. I definitely think that could be a good idea. I think creating, maybe a fun choice board or a getting to know the teacher, especially in distance learning. We're a high school only district, so we have students, freshmen that are coming in that are brand new to high school that maybe have never even stepped foot on campus. So we're trying to come up with creative ways to welcome them and help them assimilate to distance learning high school. We're actually using a gamified approach where we have teachers that are building a game specifically for freshmen. But creating a choice board would be a really cool idea with just some fun activities of, introducing themselves or finding information about their school or their teacher or something. I love that idea. Do students find it confusing or hard to make a choice? I don't think so. I think, like I said, I think just the fact that they have a choice is really helpful. It might be if it's a tic-tac-toe versus just you have full choice of how you're completing it. Maybe that could be more difficult for some because they really want to do this one and this one, but they have to do the center or whatever. But no, I haven't experienced that students have trouble making the choice. General rubric. So a general rubric I think is a really good idea. Again, if you're doing, multiple choice boards over time and you're creating 9 different activities every time you have a choice board, that's a lot of rubrics. And again, students are only doing potentially only 3 of them. I don't have one to share, but I think that's a really good idea. Question about make a copy for each student. So yeah, if it was one like this where the choice board is just for clicking, you don't have to do make a copy for each student. You could share it, through Google Classroom or however you're doing it as just a view only. If you wanted to do it a way where they're going to be actually turning in links on the document or adding their own, screenshots or whatever, then you would want to do a make a copy for each student. So kind of depends how you're handling it. If it's one like this one, where they're just clicking on these to access these other Google Docs, then maybe those other Google Docs would be a forced make a copy, or you would have those shared through Google Classroom so that they had make a copy for each student. This one, they're just clicking on these to access the specific assignments. The videos are just clickable links. And then if you're turning in your work through a Google form, that would just be a link. So this particular one could be shared as just view only. And then a lot of these, if you click on them, might have you do a force make a copy if you're then going to be filling it out, or this one just tells you right here to file make a copy. So probably depending on the level of the students you're working with might determine how you want to set that up. There's a question about, does it take a long time to create these? I think it depends. You might have, a bunch of activities that you do every year with a specific unit already. So if you're not starting from scratch, just throwing the links and that kind of stuff in there doesn't take too long. You can get pretty quick with that. If you are starting from scratch and having to come with, what are these 9 activities that I'm going to do? It might take a little bit longer initially, but I think the more you create them, the more you kind of get a hang for them. There also might be, things like activities like edu protocols and things where, quizzes and things that you can use over and over, and you just have to go and find that quiz or how you're going to implement that edu protocol. So there might be some that apply to almost every choice board that you create. All right. So hopefully you all were able to click around and explore those. And I probably missed some of your questions, but thank you for sharing your notices and wonders, and you can keep throwing those in there. I'm going to jump back to the presentation here and talk about playlists. Similarly to choice boards, students are going to complete these activities on a certain topic. A different way to sort of package these activities together. Students are choosing where they're going to earn their points. So instead of, choosing how they're going to get a tic-tac-toe or whatever, they are going to be choosing how they're going to earn their points. And again, they can be leveled by DOK, as we were looking at earlier. You could chunk them in different groups however you want. Domains of language for ELD, I love that idea, etc. So this is how one might be set up. This is another example from Steve's session where it's focused on the DOK. So you want to start off with clear directions on what the students need to do, how much time they have to complete. You could have just one section of your playlist, so you don't necessarily have to have it categorized into different chunks. But if you are, then you could separate those out. Have the links to the activities right there, similar to on the choice board. That column right there where it says completed. So that could be an area where the students are keeping track of the ones they're doing. That could also be a place where they're linking their evidence of what they completed. So if they had to make a copy of a Google Doc that was in there, you could maybe just put the word link in there and they would hyperlink that word or their evidence right there. So they're turning in their actual work right on the playlist. Again, on the bottom, you would have a place for some helpful videos and then a place to turn in, very similar to what we were discussing with choice boards. As I said, we're doing a gamified thing for our freshmen. So we use a Ludo. Some of you might be familiar with Ludo either through your district or the Q conferences have been using a Ludo as a way to engage people that are attending. But I kind of think of the choice boards, of the playlists as very similar to the structure of a Ludo, where you have these levels, and then within those levels, you have what they call missions. And then within those missions, you have a choice in how you're going to earn your points. Sometimes there might be required ones, and you could do that on your playlist as well. But for the most part, you're getting choice in where you're earning your points. And there's a certain number of points that you need to earn within each mission and then within the total level. So I see a lot of similarities for those of you that are familiar with the Ludo in how playlists are set up. So again, here's what a playlist might look like. Here I changed that completed column to the actual link to the resource. And again, instead of that being the link to the resource, you could have that the place that the students are submitting their evidence. So looking at this, the point value. So I'm going to have you guys explore this one here in just one second. But you might have to complete, actually, let me go back real quick. Going back to this example, so looking at just this top section up here, you could tell them that, they have to get 6 points. So there's several 1-point assignments, and then there's some 2-point assignments. So a student that is maybe struggling with this concept, is new to this concept, isn't comfortable enough to jump to those 2 points, might want to go ahead and complete all of those 1-pointers, because those are maybe quick hitters, helping them understand it. Maybe they're, watching an Edpuzzle video and answering those questions. Maybe they're taking a quiz and they feel comfortable with that, and they're getting their 1-pointers out of the way. Someone who already feels more comfortable with it might be able to jump to those 2-pointers and just knock out those 3 2-pointers, and they got their 6 points right there. So again, it sort of allows for that self-differentiation where I can kind of choose where I want to complete. Yes, the 1-pointers might be easier, and if you're worried about a student taking the easy route, they're gonna have to do more of those 1-pointers to complete their 6 points. So, okay, jumping back to this one. So here I have a playlist of choice boards and playlists with some activities for you all to complete. And let me go ahead and throw this in the chat to everyone. Okay. So now I'm going to give you some time to play around on a playlist. So for this particular playlist, and it's due at 2 o'clock, so you got about 20 minutes here to complete this. There are some different activities. So there's some 1-pointers here, which are just to check out a sample playlist. There's some different resources. One from Lisa Heifel, who is one of the HyperDocs gals, on Show What You Know Bingo. There is something from Shake It Up Learning, Casey Bell. There is a AJ Giuliani and Catlin Tucker articles that are really helpful. So you need to earn 5 points. Because I knew we were going to have a fairly large group, I'm not going to collect all of your work. So it's on the honor system. But I'm going to give you guys a little bit of time to click around and check out some of these resources. And big 3-pointer there. If you tweet out an idea you have for what you're going to do with playlists or choice boards. Check out Catlin Tucker, AJ Giuliani's articles, or any of these one-pointers. Some of those are just exploring them. There's also some videos down here on choice boards and playlists. For younger grades, those of you using Seesaw, there's one on using it with Seesaw. All of the examples I've been giving, by the way, have been in Google Docs. There's also different ways of doing it in Google Slides, which is a whole nother idea. But I'm going to give you a little bit of time right now to click around and choose how you're going to earn your 5 points on this playlist. And then I will also try and catch up on some of the questions that you all were throwing in the chat. I think people continue to join, so I'm going to throw that link in there again. And let me get caught up with your questions here. Yeah, so I'm seeing more questions and comments about, just it being time consuming and be able to create these. I mean, you can keep them as simple as, just having links to activities and assignments. Really think about a lot of those T1 tech tools that are out there for you. In your district, you're probably already using a lot of things like Edpuzzle, quizzes, maybe Flipgrid. Taking advantage of those things that, again, can be repeated from one choice board or one playlist to another, but specific to the topic that you're working on. Those ones that do the grading for you are great, because it's giving the students that immediate feedback, also saving you some time when it comes to grading. And then you can just sort of do a quick check of, did they complete it? Or what I like when you have students that are older that are capable is put it on them. They need to provide you with the evidence. So just a simple screenshot, thrown into your choice board or your playlist that you can quickly look at and see that they completed. Or again, the idea of maybe using Google Slides. So if I share I make a copy for each student with essentially a blank Google Slides, but where they're turning in their 1, 2, and 3 items that they completed from their choice board or whatever. Having those screenshots can be a really quick way for me to just kind of click through and see that they completed what they were supposed to complete. And again, more comments on it being time consuming. For sure, when you're completing 9 assignments and students are only having to do 3 or whatever the numbers are, it is slightly more time consuming. But again, huge difference in student engagement. Just having that little bit of choice. Working with one science teacher, she said, yes, I had to provide these 9 articles instead of just the however many we would have normally done. But the fact that the students had choice in which articles they got to read made all the difference, and more student completion. So someone asking about Alludo. I will say Alludo is something your district would probably have to pay for. It's not a free resource, but a side plug that I have found it to make a huge difference in the professional development, how we do professional development in my district, and just the collaboration and bringing people together. It's been a game changer. Also, I wanted to do a quick shameless plug. I mentioned Catlin Tucker here a couple times, and she has this article on playlists. She will be keynoting our local Gold Coast Q affiliate event, Oxnard, which is August 10th through 15th, so you can check that out. Someone mentioned the idea of collaborating on these choice boards and playlists. I think that's a great idea. Whether you're a 5th grade team or a social science team or high school English team or whatever, maybe taking turns on creating them, or, you know, if you have a team of 3, each of us will come up with 3 activities, however you want to do that. I think sharing the workload that way is a great idea. The nice thing too is once you have these built, you can reuse them over and over. You may want to slightly tweak them here and there. But yeah, it is definitely heavier work on the front end. I know kind of similarly when I first gamified my classroom, I had to come up with essentially the whole trimester. I was teaching a middle school computer class. I had to come up with a whole trimester of activities, but then the students were able to work through them, and it changed my role from, you know, being the person who was up in front of the class talking all the time to more of a support role. And I really loved that because I still did some direct instruction here and there when I could kind of see that there was, you know, particular things that a lot of students were struggling with. But for the most part, I was going around and meeting with students individually and providing that personal feedback. Yeah, I will put the link to Gold Coast Q. Someone requested that. And I will throw the link to the presentation in there again. Oops. Yeah, someone asked about, you know, self-pacing can be a challenge for some students. You know, it sounds good in theory, but it also probably a lot of you face that in distance learning, that we have kids that are just waiting and not completing stuff. Yeah, so this may not help with those students. So it might be a situation where, you know, you have some sort of check-in or something with those students. Yeah, the self-pacing for those that struggle with self-pacing can be definitely a challenge with choice boards and playlists. No, Ludo isn't free. It's a per teacher license. So yeah, you would have to check with them on that. Maybe someone at your district. If anybody is interested, total side note, but if anyone is interested in a Ludo for their district, I'd be more than happy to talk to anybody at your district, because I think it's been a game changer in my district, and I think it's been a huge culture shift with bringing in not only technology, but all sorts of different pedagogical things and collaboration and bringing folks together. So Classcraft is another one, gamification tool that has a free version. I haven't personally worked with that one, but I know that one is out there. And I think there's a lot of similarity in gamification and what we're talking about here. A lot of the benefits of gamification are very similar to choice boards and playlists, with you know, choice being a big part of it. So looking at if you're going to start building your own choice board or playlist. So yeah, thinking about what standards or what it is that you're trying to hit. It may be standards, may be the focus, 4Cs may be the focus, DOK may be the focus. And then selecting those activities. The link here is one to the Webb's Depth of Knowledge Guide, and then this other one, again coming from Steve here, to help you sort of plan out the activities that you want them to accomplish. Choosing whether you want to do it in Google Docs or Google Slides. I guess first I should have said choosing if you want to do a playlist or choice board. And then providing links to the activities, and then as much as you can, providing helpful resources, videos, screencasts, tutorials, and things to help them both understand the content and complete the activity. And then when and how. So I love the idea that someone asked about in the chat, but I don't have that resource for you. But the idea of doing one at the beginning of the year. Actually, yesterday I presented on the question formulation technique, the QFT, and we went through how to do the QFT in distance learning. I always recommend doing a QFT not on something content related, but just something fun and engaging in the beginning to get them used to the process. And I love that idea of doing that same thing here. You know, here's the beginning of the year. Getting to know how the class is going to work, getting to know the teacher, getting to know your classmates, whatever that focus is. But just to get them used to a choice board and how do they take a screenshot, or how do they submit a link, or how are they turning it in, all that kind of good stuff. So I think that's a great idea. It could be a way to kick off a unit, you know, where they're getting to sort of choose some of the different main ideas of that unit. And, you know, they're getting some choice in what they're learning about, and maybe that choice carries on throughout the unit. Could be used for weekly assignments, again, in distance learning. A lot of you may be continuing with that model where they're getting the assignment on a Monday and turning it in on Friday, or whatever it might be. So the structure of the choice boards and playlists fits nicely with that. It could be a way to review something that you've covered throughout the quarter, throughout the semester, and here are topics that we covered already, and maybe they're choosing ones that, you know, they feel like they need to review. So it's a way to review going into the final test or the final project or whatever it is. Setting them up to cover, you know, over 1 to 2 weeks. And then station rotation and blended learning. So something that I've been thinking about lately is, you know, sort of as the ed tech coordinator and doing ed tech PD and stuff in my district, been providing a whole bunch. We had a pretty good plan in our district, and we were able to provide a whole bunch of virtual PD to our teachers on all these different great tools that are available, either that are free or that we pay for in our district and that we have available to all of our teachers for distance learning. And there's so many out there, and some people attended all of those sessions because they want to learn about all of them. But a lot of folks were brand new to this, and you know, using some of these tools. How are we going to take what you were doing in distance learning when we return back to the classroom? What does that look like in the classroom, in a face-to-face classroom? So blended learning is sort of a big part of that. So one thing that we were encouraging before we went to distance learning is the idea of the station rotation model. This, again, I got from Catlin Tucker, who is a big proponent of the station rotation model. And typically there are 3 types of stations. There's usually the independent digital station where, you know, you're leveraging those T1 tools, those Edpuzzles, and those other types of digital tools that students can work on independently. They can answer questions. They can get that immediate feedback. It's doing the grading for me, so I don't have to be there with them, but I'm still getting good information on what they're understanding and what they're not understanding. And so typically there's an independent station. Then there's usually a collaborative station that could be digital or not, students working together to write their ideas down on a chart paper, students working together to create a Google drawing of some sort, whatever it is, but students are working collaboratively on some common activity. And then there's the teacher-led station. And what I love about this, especially at the high school or upper grade levels, is it gives teachers an opportunity to do some small group instruction or even some one-on-one instruction, which high school teachers don't typically get a whole lot of time to do that. But because we're able to, you know, leverage the technology, it frees up the teacher to be able to either sit with a small group and do, you know, some direct instruction with that small group, maybe based on a need that they have. Or maybe we have like some English teachers that are sitting down and the students are doing just their writing, and the teachers there are able to give individual feedback as they're working on their writing, whatever it is. It does free up the teacher to do some small group and individual instruction or feedback. So the playlists and the choice boards can fit really nicely in with the station rotation model, because it can be something that they are doing on an ongoing basis in that independent digital station. So they're able to work independently. And then maybe the teacher-led station is just supporting what they're working on in that independent station. So some of you that might be in going in back to school in a hybrid model, maybe that makes sense for you. And those of you that are looking forward to someday when you're able to return back to school and work with students face-to-face once again, something to consider, another way to bring in these playlists and choice boards. And again, one more shameless plug, Catlin Tucker will be one of our keynotes at Oxnard, which is going to be focused on distance learning and blended learning. So there's a bunch of, there's the link to the bit.ly again. Here's another place for a bunch of those examples of playlists and choice boards. And then here are links once again to those templates, which you can start with. So feel free to take one of the ones that's already been created and make a copy of that, and, you know, just replace some of the icons or replace some of the activities, or start from scratch and start throwing in specific activities that make sense for you in your classroom. But that's about all I have. If anybody wants to chime in with questions, I'll also read through some of these questions in the chat. Or Steve, if you have anything that you want to throw in from your experience with choice boards and playlists, feel free.
Oh, Jay, you did a great job with what you had there. The only thing I would add is maybe if you use Google Slides, you can actually embed your videos into each of the boxes, and then have a link right below it to an activity that they would have to do for that. And then I did put my website out there for some more examples, but K1 teachers, there is a little different choice board I made for the K1 kids. So if you want to check it out. But thanks, Jay. You did an awesome job.
Oh, and thank you for adding those in there. Just quickly going through this chat, and I know they're going to cut us off right around 2, so I'll try and get to as many as I can. But there was one question saying, I don't understand the difference between a choice board and a playlist. So that's a big one that let me jump back and go over that real quickly. So essentially, I mean, there are a whole lot of similarities between the two. The main difference is on a choice board, you're just having them I mean, part of the difference is just the structure of it, what it looks like, the visuals of it. So oftentimes on a choice board, you're having them complete a tic-tac-toe of some sort. On a playlist, you usually just have a list of activities, and you sort of differentiate them by their point values, and the students are choosing where they're getting their points. So there's a certain number of points that are required that they must get, and then they're getting to choose where they're getting those points. So they might be able to complete just a bunch of 1-pointers, or they may complete just a couple 2-pointers, or they may have a 3-pointer and a 1-pointer. So they're getting to choose how they're earning those points to meet the minimum requirement. There's some questions about access to the recording. Moises, I don't know, are these recorded and then made available afterwards? or if anybody else knows.
Hey, Jay, up in the corner, it looks like it's being recorded right now.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Sessions are being recorded. Those links will be made available at a later time. If you reach out to either Nancy or Dennis Large, he'll be able to assist you with any further questions you might have.
Thank you. I'm going to throw, because people are asking for different links, I'm going to throw the link to the whole presentation in there one more time, just because that has links to everything else as well. And thank you all so much for attending, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions, or on a side note on the Aludo or the Oxnard. But thank you all.
Thank you everyone for attending. This will conclude our last breakout, and just keep an eye out for next year's conference.